Hey guys, hope you are having a fantastic start to your week. Today we are going to start the first video of notes on World War II. Good news and bad news. Good news is it's our last new content for the trimester. Bad news is there's lots of stuff with it, so I'm going to do my best to keep this as short as I can, and while also giving you the important information. Um, some of you have been waiting for this the entire year. This is your favorite part of history, and some of you get lost and bored talking about wars. And for both sides, I'm going to try and make it as best I can for you because this is one of my favorite things to cover for sure. Um, so make sure that you are completing these last few videos here, and then you're done for the trimester. Okay, make sure you look in the folder. There's a couple things for you to do along with the videos, and then that's it. So let's finish strong here. Um, all right. So, again, with the good news, bad news. If we were in class, this would be a lot of like video time because there's so many great videos on World War II. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do that quite as much. So, at the end of the notes, I've kind of given you some videos that I think are good that you can watch if you're really interested to know more. Okay. But here's kind of the overview. We're going to go with the causes of the war today. Tomorrow we'll look at the events in Europe. The following day we'll look at the Pacific theater and the events in the Pacific, and then we'll look at the effects. So you're looking at 4 notes videos. Again, break them up into smaller chunks so there's not quite as many. Um, the videos aren't quite as long. Okay, so causes of World War II. Well, the first, there's really 2 causes, and the first one is the rise of political ideologies, and that's what we set up with totalitarianism. So the rise of fascism in these 3 countries, this total power in the hands of the dictator, creates some mistreatment of people because in fascist governments, they believe that if you don't fit the ideal person or what they view as the ideal person, or if you express opposing viewpoints, you're persecuted. We talked about all of that. So, this rise of fascism really creates 2 opposite viewpoints in the world. We've got a fascist side and a democracy side, and that's exactly what this is here, minus the Soviet Union, because we know that they're communism. But these 3 countries are fascist states, and these 3 are democratic countries. And so you see the 2 sides fighting each other, the Axis versus the Allies in this sense. Okay, so the U.S. and the USSR are neutral at first, but eventually they'll join the Allied powers and fight with them. But these are the 2 sides of World War II: the Axis, Germany, Italy, Japan. The Allies are France, America, Britain, and the USSR or Russia. Okay, so that's really the first cause. These 2 competing ideologies with one another. Okay, and people have very strong viewpoints, strong enough to go to war. Okay, number 2 is appeasement, and appeasement is the policy of giving into dictatorial powers to avoid conflict. Okay, so it's the policy of giving dictators what they want to avoid some sort of war or military conflict. In the lead up to World War II, Germany is the dictatorial power that is getting what they want, and Britain and France, and to some extent the United States, are the ones that are giving in to them. They are saying that, we don't want another World War One. That was a big issue. We don't want another World War One. That was devastating for people, devastating for countries. So, we're just going to kind of slap you on the wrist and say, hey, don't do that anymore. But really, we're going to give in because we want to avoid another major conflict like we just had in World War One. Okay, so here's kind of a history of how Hitler was appeased. Okay, in 1931, Japan invades Manchuria. So Japan is here, and it invades Manchuria over here. And then in 1935, Italy invades Ethiopia down here, goes through Africa and invades Ethiopia. And in both of these scenarios, the League of Nations, which was created after World War One that you learned about, that kind of national group that was created to avoid further conflicts, they don't do anything. They kind of are like, well, we'll see if they push it any further, but for now, we're just going to act like it didn't happen, basically. Okay, so because they do nothing, and the U.S. declares that the U.S. kind of says, okay, we're out of this, we're neutral. we got things to focus on. This is kind of during the Great Depression for the United States, so they're like, yeah, we got plenty to do at home, so we're going to stay neutral. And so this gives Hitler some confidence. He's like, well, these two countries are invading others and doing what they want, and the League of Nations isn't doing a thing. It gives him confidence that, hey, I can push the boundaries and try and invade some places, and they haven't done anything yet. So let's see if they do something, and we'll go from there. But until they do something, we're going to keep kind of pushing the envelope here. Remember, League of Nations, Britain, France, they don't want another war, so they don't want to um, speak out against this and actively try to put it down because they're afraid that it might spark another war. Okay, so in 1933, Hitler orders that's in 1933 he becomes Chancellor of Germany, and he orders the German military to begin to start building up. And this is in direct violation of the Treaty of Versailles, which ended World War One. And the League of Nations doesn't do anything, but Hitler pulls Germany from that group. So if you remember, all the groups in Europe were part of that League of Nations that met and decided things for the world and tried to keep the peace. And so he says, you know what, we're going to step back from that because we don't really need to be involved in it anymore. He didn't want to be involved in it anymore. So he violates the Treaty of Versailles by building up the military. Then in 1935, he moves troops into this dashed yellow area right here, which is called the Rhineland. Okay. And again, this is another violation of the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles said that was going to be a demilitarized zone. Germany couldn't occupy that. So Hitler, again, is going against the treaty that Germany signed to keep the peace. So in 1938, again, Britain and France don't really do a whole lot until 1938. They're like, Hitler, we need Germany, we need to meet at the Munich conference because this has gone way too far. So what they talk about is how to get Hitler and Germany to stop or to do what they want. So again, Britain and France give in to Germany and say, we will give you the Sudetenland, which is this, I don't even know, pinkish color right here. Okay, that's called the Sudetenland. They say, we'll give you this little piece of territory if you promise to stop invading and promise to stop building up your military and moving outward. And Hitler's like, yeah, of course I promise, which obviously we know is not true. He would have said anything at that time to get what he wanted, including this little piece of territory. And Britain and France are like, sweet. He said he's going to stop. We've avoided a major conflict. And in 1938, they really thought they were doing the right thing, but really they're just giving in to him consistently, and he's not going to stop. So it eventually gets much worse. And in 1939, he takes Czechoslovakia. And then on September 1st, 1939, is when World War II officially begins because Hitler invades Poland and he takes over the country of Poland. Remember, he's trying to expand the German Empire and get to what it was during like the Holy Roman Empire and bring it back to that strength. So he invades Poland, which is right here. So now he's in control of all of this territory right here, so much bigger than he once was. And so Britain and France declare war on Germany, and Germany and Italy are allied. So when they declare war, Italy steps in to help them out. Another chain reaction similar like we saw in World War One. But it officially begins with the invasion of Poland. That's the official event that sparks it all. And for the first year, Germany engages in what's called a blitzkrieg, which is a quick strike attack. It's mostly air attacks. On Poland and on France and on Yugoslavia. But again, Hitler broke his promise, and he kept wanting to take more because the other countries were simply appeasing him and giving in to his demands. But they couldn't give in any longer. They needed to make sure he knew that this couldn't continue. Okay, so like I said, Great Britain and France declare war. The USSR and the United States are still neutral to an extent. The Soviet Union is getting really worried right now because Germany's approaching very fast. And the United States is neutral in a sense that they're not sending troops, but they are selling weapons to the Allied powers. They're not, because they do not like fascism and they're so bent on democracy, they're not selling weapons to any of the Axis powers, but France and Great Britain, they most certainly are sending war. They're selling weapons to, and they're doing it with what's called a cash carry policy. So they're saying if you want our war supplies, you got to pay cash, and then you have to transport them away from our ships. So the United States is not comfortable traveling all the way over to Europe to drop things off. So the the English or the British and the French have to come over and get it and then bring it back. But they do because they're so desperate for those materials. Okay, so this is kind of a visual timeline of all the events of appeasing Hitler and leading up to World War II. But really, the big major causes are the rise of dictatorships like fascism and the two opposing viewpoints, and then appeasing Hitler and giving into his demands in order to avoid another war. World War I was way too devastating. They didn't want to have another one, so they gave in at first, but it eventually became too much. Okay, that's all for today, and or for this video, I should say, and we'll pick up with the European battles next. All right, have a fantastic day, and let me know if you have any questions.